Sarah Matthews stood at the kitchen sink of her modest farmhouse, watching the sun dip below the Montana horizon. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed the same plate for the third time. Behind her, she could feel Thomas's presence like a shadow that swallowed all warmth from the room. "You burned the roast again," he said, his voice flat and cold. "How hard is it to follow a simple recipe? My mother could cook a perfect meal with her eyes closed." Sarah didn't turn around. She'd learned years ago that meeting his eyes only made things worse. "I'm sorry." The oven temperature was off. "I'll fix it tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Thomas laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been saying tomorrow for 8 years. You're worthless, Sarah. Completely worthless." The word hit her like a physical blow, though she'd heard it countless times before. Worthless. It had become her identity, the label that defined her existence in this house. She was worthless at cooking, worthless at keeping the house clean enough, worthless at being the wife Thomas thought he deserved. "I try my best," she whispered. "Your best isn't good enough. It never has been." Thomas grabbed his jacket from the hook. "I'm going to the tavern. At least there I won't have to look at your pathetic face." The door slammed, rattling the windows. Sarah stood frozen until she heard his truck roar down the gravel driveway. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Only then did the tears come. She sank onto the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, and let 8 years of pain wash over her. She'd married Thomas believing in the fairy tale, believing in the charming ranch hand who'd promised her the world. But the charm had evaporated within months of their wedding. What remained was a man who seemed to feed on her diminishing spirit, who grew stronger as she grew weaker. Sarah pulled herself up and walked to the bedroom. In the back of her closet, hidden behind winter coats, was a small box. Inside was $347, every penny she'd managed to save from grocery money over the past 2 years. She counted it again, her hands shaking. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was hope in paper form. She'd been planning this for months. The women's shelter in Billings was 3 hours away, but she didn't have enough money to get there and start over. She needed more time, more savings, more courage. But tonight something felt different. The word worthless echoed in her mind, and for the first time, she didn't believe it. She wasn't worthless. She was trapped, yes. She was hurt, absolutely. But worthless? No. Sarah made a decision. Tomorrow she would ask Martha, the woman who ran the general store in town, about the job she'd mentioned last month. Martha had said she needed help with inventory and bookkeeping. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It was a way out. She returned the money to its hiding place and walked to the bathroom. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. At 32, she looked 45. Her blonde hair had lost its shine. Dark circles ringed her blue eyes. Her cheeks were hollow, her shoulders perpetually hunched as if expecting a blow. "You are not worthless," she told her reflection. The words felt foreign on her tongue, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. She said it again, louder this time. "You are not worthless." The sound of Thomas's truck returning sent her heart racing. She quickly splashed water on her face and hurried back to the kitchen, assuming her usual position of invisible servitude. But something had shifted. The seed of rebellion, planted years ago and buried under layers of abuse and self-doubt, had finally cracked open. Sarah didn't know it yet, but this night marked the beginning of her transformation. This night was the last time she would accept Thomas's verdict on her worth. Tomorrow would bring Martha's job offer. Next week would bring an unexpected encounter that would change everything. And in 3 months, Sarah Matthews would stand before a Lakota chief who would see in her what she'd forgotten existed, her true value, her inner strength, her precious spirit. But tonight, she simply survived. And sometimes, survival is the bravest thing of all. Morning arrived with unusual clarity. Sarah woke before Thomas, dressed quietly, and prepared his breakfast with mechanical precision. He ate without looking at her, grunted something about checking fences on the north pasture, and left. The routine was so familiar it felt like a script they'd performed 1,000 times. But today, Sarah had her own lines to speak. She waited until his truck disappeared over the hill, then grabbed her coat and walked the 2 miles into town. The October air bit at her cheeks, but the physical discomfort felt almost welcome. It was pain she could understand, pain that would fade. Martha's General Store sat on Main Street, a weathered building that had served the community for 3 generations. The bell above the door chimed as Sarah entered, and Martha looked up from the register, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile. "Sarah Matthews, as I live and breathe. Haven't seen you in weeks, dear. How are you?" The kindness in Martha's voice nearly broke Sarah's composure. "I'm well, thank you." "Martha, you mentioned needing help here at the store. Is that position still available?" Martha's expression shifted, understanding flickering in her dark eyes. She'd lived in this town for 6 to 7 years. She knew things without being told. "It is. 20 hours a week to start. $7 an hour. You'd handle inventory, help customers, manage the books." "I'll take it," Sarah said quickly, before fear could change her mind. "When can I start?" "How about right now? I'll show you around." For the next 3 hours, Martha taught Sarah the store's systems. The work was simple but engaging, and Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: competence. She was good at this. Her mind, dormant for so long, awakened to the challenge of organizing, counting, and problem-solving. "You're a natural," Martha said as lunch approached. "Take this." She pressed 2 $20 bills into Sarah's hand. "Advance on your first week." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I can't." "You can and you will. Consider it a signing bonus." Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. "And Sarah, if you ever need anything, anything at all, you come to me. Understand?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. She tucked the money into her pocket, added it mentally to her hidden stash, and felt the future shift slightly in her favor. She was home before Thomas returned, dinner waiting, her secret intact. But over the following weeks, Sarah transformed quietly but steadily. She worked at Martha's store 3 mornings a week, telling Thomas she was volunteering at the church. He never questioned it, too absorbed in his own world to notice the light returning to her eyes. By mid-November, Sarah had saved nearly $600. She'd contacted the women's shelter, learned about their programs, and began planning her departure. She would leave after Thanksgiving, when Thomas took his annual hunting trip to the mountains. She'd have a 3-day head start. But fate, as it often does, had different plans. On a gray Wednesday afternoon, Sarah was restocking shelves when the store bell chimed. She turned to see a man unlike anyone she'd encountered in their small Montana town. He was tall and dignified, his long dark hair streaked with silver, his face carved with lines that spoke of wisdom and hardship. He wore traditional Lakota clothing mixed with modern elements, a beaded vest over a simple shirt, jeans, and worn boots. "Good afternoon," Sarah said, her customer service voice automatic. "Can I help you find something?" The man studied her with eyes that seemed to see past her carefully constructed walls. "I'm looking for supplies. My truck broke down about 5 miles north. I'm Chief 2 Horses, from the Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota." "Chief?" Sarah repeated, surprised. "A title that means I serve my people," he said with a slight smile. "Right now, I need water, some food, and perhaps the number of a good mechanic." As Sarah gathered his supplies, Chief 2 Horses watched her with unsettling attention. Finally, he spoke. "Forgive me for being forward, but I sense great pain in you. And great strength, though you don't see it yourself." Sarah's hands froze on a can of soup. "I don't know what you mean. In my tradition, we believe that some souls shine brighter than others. Yours burns like a flame trying to break through darkness." He stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You are precious, daughter. Whatever voices tell you otherwise are lying." The word precious struck Sarah like lightning. She stood paralyzed, the can still in her hand, tears streaming down her face. This stranger, this chief from a world she didn't know, had seen her. Truly seen her. "How did you?" she began, but couldn't finish. "The spirits speak if we listen," Chief 2 Horses said simply. "And they're telling me that your path is about to change. Trust the journey, even when it frightens you." Chief 2 Horses became a regular presence in Sarah's life over the next 2 weeks, though neither of them planned it. His truck repairs took longer than expected, and he found lodging at the small motel on the edge of town. Each day, he'd visit Martha's store, purchasing small items he didn't really need, engaging Sarah in conversations that felt less like small talk and more like spiritual counseling. He told her stories of his people, of women who'd endured unimaginable hardships and emerged stronger. He spoke of his own late wife, a woman who'd survived domestic violence before finding her way to the reservation and eventually to him. He never directly addressed Sarah's situation, but his words were clearly chosen with purpose. "In Lakota tradition, we have a concept called wakin," he explained one quiet afternoon. "It means sacred or mysterious. Every person carries wakin, their own sacred power. But sometimes, we forget. We let others convince us our light doesn't exist." Sarah found herself opening up to this stranger in ways she never had with anyone. She told him about her dreams of becoming a teacher, abandoned when she married Thomas. She shared her love of reading, suppressed because Thomas called it a waste of time. She even admitted, in a whisper, that she was planning to leave. When? Chief Two Horses asked simply. Next week. My husband hunts every year after Thanksgiving. I'll go then. The chief nodded slowly. The spirits have good timing. I return to my reservation next week as well. My offer stands. If you need a place to heal, to find yourself, you're welcome at Crow Creek. We have programs for women seeking new beginnings. South Dakota is so far, Sarah said, though the idea stirred something hopeful in her chest. Distance can be a blessing when you're starting over. That evening, Sarah made a critical mistake. She was so lost in thought about her conversation with the chief that she didn't hear Thomas's truck pull up early. She didn't hide her happiness quickly enough. What's got you smiling? Thomas demanded, slamming the door behind him. Nothing. Just had a good day at the store. The store? His eyes narrowed. You mean your little volunteer project? Or is there something else making you happy? Fear flooded Sarah's system, but beneath it ran a current of defiance she'd never felt before. I've been working at Martha's store. Earning money. Doing something useful. The words were out before she could stop them. The truth she'd hidden for weeks, spoken in a moment of careless courage. Thomas's face darkened to a dangerous shade of red. Working? You went behind my back and got a job? Making me look like I can't provide for my own wife. That's not what. The slap came fast, snapping her head to the side. Sarah stumbled, catching herself on the kitchen counter. Blood trickled from her split lip. You don't make decisions without my permission, Thomas hissed. You don't have thoughts I don't approve. You are nothing without me. Nothing. But something in Sarah had fundamentally changed. Maybe it was weeks of Martha's kindness. Maybe it was Chief Two Horses calling her precious. Maybe it was simply that she'd remembered who she was beneath the abuse. Whatever the reason, instead of cowering, Sarah stood tall. No, she said clearly. You're wrong. Thomas's shock gave her a 2-second advantage. She grabbed her coat and ran. The night was freezing, snow beginning to fall, but Sarah didn't feel the cold. She ran toward town, toward Martha's house, toward safety. Behind her, she heard Thomas's roar of rage, heard his truck engine start. Her legs pumped harder. The lights of town appeared ahead. Just a little farther. Thomas's truck pulled alongside her, and he leaned out the window. Get in the truck, Sarah. Now. No. You'll freeze out here, you stupid woman. Get in the truck. Sarah veered off the road, running through a field toward the cluster of buildings ahead. She could see Martha's house, could see lights on. Almost there. The truck couldn't follow across the rough terrain. Thomas jumped out, chasing her on foot, but years of ranch work had slowed him, and desperation gave Sarah speed she didn't know she possessed. She crashed through Martha's front door, gasping. Help me, please. Martha took one look at Sarah's bleeding face and Thomas approaching the house, and made a phone call. Within minutes, Sheriff Coleman arrived. Thomas Matthews, you need to calm down, the sheriff said firmly. That's my wife. She belongs at home. She's a grown woman making her own choices. The standoff lasted 20 minutes. Finally, Thomas left, but not before shouting through Martha's door, You'll come back, Sarah. You always do. You're nothing without me. Sarah sat in Martha's kitchen, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot tea. Her hands shook uncontrollably. You're safe now, Martha said softly. And you're not going back. I don't have anywhere to go. My plan has changed, Martha finished. And that's okay. We'll figure this out together. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Chief Two Horses sitting in Martha's living room, drinking coffee and speaking quietly with her host. When he saw Sarah emerge, his expression was grave but kind. Martha called me last night, he explained. I want to renew my offer. Come to Crow Creek. We have a women's center there, a safe place where you can heal and decide your next steps. No pressure, no judgment. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. South Dakota felt impossibly far, impossibly foreign. But what were her alternatives? The women's shelter in Billings was her original plan, but Thomas knew about it. She'd mentioned it once, years ago, during a brief moment when he'd seemed almost human. He'd find her there. I don't know anything about reservation life, Sarah said quietly. I'd be completely out of place. You're out of place here too, Chief Two Horses observed gently. The question is, Where do you want to rebuild? Martha squeezed Sarah's hand. I'll support whatever you decide, honey. But I think the chief is offering you something rare, a true fresh start. By noon, Sarah had made her decision. She would go to Crow Creek. Martha helped her pack the few possessions she cared about from the farmhouse while Thomas was at work. Sarah left a note, brief, formal, and final. She requested divorce papers be sent to her lawyer, whose name Martha provided. The drive to South Dakota took 9 hours. Chief Two Horses drove his repaired truck, now loaded with Sarah's meager belongings. They spoke little at first, but as the miles accumulated, Sarah found words flowing from her she'd kept locked away for years. She told him about her childhood dreams, her love of poetry, her secret hope that she might someday teach literature to young people. She confessed her shame at staying with Thomas so long, her fear that she was somehow complicit in her own abuse. Abuse is never the victim's fault, Chief Two Horses said firmly. That's the first truth you must accept. He chose his actions. You survived them. Those are different things. They arrived at Crow Creek Reservation as the sun set, painting the South Dakota landscape in shades of amber and rose. The Women's Center was a simple building, warm and welcoming, run by a woman named Grace Blackbird who greeted Sarah with a hug that felt like coming home. Any friend of Chief Two Horses is family here, Grace said. Come, let me show you your room. The room was small but clean, with a single bed, a desk, a chair, and a window overlooking prairie that stretched to the horizon. Sarah set down her single suitcase and felt tears come again, but these were different tears. These were relief. Over the following weeks, Sarah discovered a community unlike anything she'd known. The Women's Center housed 12 other women, all survivors of various traumas, all working to rebuild their lives. There were classes in traditional crafts, counseling sessions both individual and group, and job training programs. Sarah threw herself into healing with the same determination she'd applied to surviving. She attended every counseling session, practiced the breathing techniques Grace taught her, and slowly began to sleep without nightmares. Chief Two Horses visited often, never intrusively, but always available. He taught her about Lakota philosophy, about the concept of mitikuya o yasin, all my relations, the understanding that everything and everyone is connected. You think you're alone, he told her one afternoon as they walked the prairie. But you're connected to every woman who's found the courage to leave, every person who's chosen life over death of spirit. Your strength inspires others, even when you don't see it. I don't feel strong, Sarah admitted. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. You're one of the strongest people I've met. As winter deepened, Sarah began to truly believe him. She took a job at the reservation school as a teacher's aide, working with children who reminded her why she'd wanted to teach in the first place. Their energy, their curiosity, their unfiltered joy awakened something in her she thought Thomas had killed forever. One evening in late January, Sarah stood outside the Women's Center, watching snow fall softly on the prairie. She'd been at Crow Creek for 2 months. In that time, divorce papers had been served to Thomas. He'd contested them, then given up. The process was moving forward. Chief Two Horses approached, his boots crunching in the snow. You look peaceful, he observed. I feel different, Sarah said. Like I'm remembering who I was supposed to be. You're becoming who you've always been, he corrected gently. You're just shedding the lies. Sarah turned to him, this man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't, who'd offered sanctuary without expectation. Why did you help me? You didn't know me. I knew enough, Chief Two Horses replied. I saw a precious spirit being crushed. How could I not help? There was that word again. Precious. Sarah let it sink in, let it replace worthless in the vocabulary of her self-perception. Spring arrived at Crow Creek Reservation like a promise kept. The prairie, dormant and gray throughout the harsh winter, exploded into wildflowers. Sarah had been there for 5 months, and the woman who looked back at her from the mirror was someone she barely recognized, in the best possible way. Her divorce was finalized in March. Thomas had signed the papers without further contest, perhaps realizing that Sarah was truly gone. She kept nothing from their marriage except her maiden name, which she legally reclaimed. Sarah Mitchell. It felt like being reborn. The school where she worked as an aide offered her a full-time teaching position for the upcoming academic year. Grace Blackbird suggested she move from the Women's Center into one of the small houses on the reservation available for teachers. Chief Two Horses helped her move her still modest possessions into the 2-bedroom home that would be her own, truly her own, for the first time in her adult life. How does it feel? The chief asked as they finished arranging furniture. Terrifying and wonderful, Sarah admitted. I keep waiting for someone to tell me I don't deserve this. That's Thomas's voice, not reality. You'll hear it less over time. But the chief was wrong about one thing. Sarah did hear the voice less, but it never completely disappeared. What changed was her response to it. When the internal whisper suggested she was worthless, she countered it with evidence: her students' progress, the friendship she'd built, the life she'd created from nothing. In May, the reservation held its annual spring ceremony, a celebration of renewal and gratitude. Chief Two Horses asked Sarah to participate, to stand with the community as they honored the Earth's awakening. She agreed, though the idea of being so visible still frightened her. The ceremony took place at sunset, with the entire community gathered in a meadow. Chief Two Horses spoke of the winter that tests, the spring that rewards, the cycle of death and rebirth that governs all things. Then he did something unexpected. He called Sarah forward. "This woman came to us in darkness," he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. She arrived broken, believing the lies that had been spoken over her life. But she carried within her a flame that could not be extinguished. She chose healing. She chose growth. She chose life. Sarah stood before hundreds of people, exposed and vulnerable, yet somehow safe. In our tradition, Chief Two Horses continued, we recognize that each person carries sacred power. Sarah Mitchell, you are Wakan. You are precious. Not because of what you do or don't do, but because you exist. Your worth is inherent, unchangeable, eternal. The community responded in Lakota, a blessing Sarah didn't fully understand but felt in her bones. Women from the center stood beside her: Grace, Maria, Denise, others who'd walked similar paths. They held hands, a chain of survivors who'd become warriors. After the ceremony, Sarah sat with Chief Two Horses by a fire, watching sparks rise into the darkening sky. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "You saved my life." "No," the chief replied firmly. "You saved your own life. I simply reminded you that you could. That's everything, though. Someone believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Chief Two Horses smiled. "Then pay it forward. You're a teacher now. You have students watching you, learning from you. Show them what strength looks like. Show them that past pain doesn't determine future possibilities." Sarah thought of her students, children who faced poverty, historical trauma, challenges she was only beginning to understand. She thought of how she could be for them what the chief had been for her, a mirror reflecting their true worth. "I will," she promised. As summer arrived, Sarah began writing. She chronicled her journey from worthlessness to wholeness, not for publication but for processing. The act of putting words on paper was therapeutic, transforming chaos into narrative, pain into purpose. One afternoon, Grace found her writing in the shade of a cottonwood tree. "What are you working on?" "My story. Or maybe just trying to understand it." "Will you share it?" "I don't know. Maybe someday, if it could help someone else." "It will," Grace said with certainty. "Stories like yours remind people that escape is possible. That healing is real." A year after arriving at Crow Creek, Sarah stood before her classroom on the first day of school. 23 students, ages ranging from 6 to 8, looked up at her with expectation and hope. She saw herself in some of their eyes, the ones who'd already learned to make themselves small, to doubt their worth. "Welcome," she said warmly. "This is a safe place. Here, you will be valued, challenged, and celebrated. Here, your voice matters. Here, you are precious." The word came easily now. She'd internalized the truth Chief Two Horses had spoken over her that first day in Martha's store. She was precious. Not because she was perfect, not because she never struggled, but simply because she was. After school, Chief Two Horses visited her classroom, inspecting the colorful decorations and student work already adorning the walls. "You found your calling," he observed. "I think my calling found me," Sarah corrected. "Or maybe you found it for me." "The spirits work through all of us," he said with characteristic humility. "I'm simply grateful I listened that day." They stood together in the quiet classroom, teacher and chief, survivor and witness, two souls connected by a moment of recognition that changed everything. Sarah thought back to that November afternoon, to the woman she'd been, desperate, broken, believing herself worthless. She thought of Thomas and his cruel words, of the years she'd lost to his tyranny. Surprisingly, she felt no hatred. Only sadness for the man so damaged he could only damage others, and profound gratitude for her escape. "I forgive him," Sarah said aloud, surprising herself. Chief Two Horses nodded knowingly. "Forgiveness isn't about him. It's about you releasing the weight you've carried. I know. And I'm ready to let it go. As the sun set over the South Dakota prairie, Sarah Mitchell stood in the golden light streaming through her classroom windows, and she knew with absolute certainty that she had come home. Not to a place, but to herself. The woman Thomas called worthless had discovered a truth more powerful than any lie. She was, and always had been, infinitely precious. Her journey from victim to survivor to teacher was complete, yet just beginning. Each day brought new challenges, new growth, new opportunities to become more fully herself. And each day, she carried forward the gift Chief Two Horses had given her, the unshakable knowledge that her worth was never in question. She was precious. She was Wakan. She was enough. And she was finally, gloriously free.